Hi everyone. My name is Rob Tyndall, or at least the voiceover persona. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here in person due to time zone differences or family obligations. But, I hope my insights will help you develop as Jedi. So I am going to talk today about building a real Jedi using my own individual learnings of Jediism and my personal training/education program that I developed to get me where I am at. I will get more into what I mean by building a real Jedi a little later on. But first, maybe you should know a little more about me. This is me. Hi again. While I was born in the United States and am still a citizen, I actually immigrated to Australia 10 years ago. In fact, I live on the edge of the great Australian Outback, in a town called Mildura on the Murray River. And yes, occasionally I have kangaroos and emus in the front yard. Even last year had the third most deadly snake in the world having a rest on my back patio. But, that is just Australia. While I think I may have first run across the term Jediism in the mid-1990s, it wasn't until I had a rummage around the internet looking at religions a few years ago that it really caught my eye again. And after giving it some deep consideration, started on a path of self-education. During this journey on my path, I have gobbled everything I can find on Jediism. To date, I have read over 25 books on the subject. If it is on the internet and I haven't found it, well, it is pretty well hidden. Most importantly, I have used my own discernment or judgment on what I have studied and how best to apply it to my life. As I have stated, I am self-educated. So I count myself as unaffiliated. I am a Jedi, nothing more, nothing less at this point. But the biggest thing is I am a Jedi realist, and that is how I approach the path. So that is me. But, if that is all you needed to know, well, I would be a pretty short book. Given that I have absorbed everything, I am a bit of a mix of all the different views on Jediism. So let's get stuck into my beliefs a little deeper. Oh, by the way, in the course of this video, if I somehow trample on your beliefs or you think I have something completely wrong, I apologize in advance. Please feel free to come to me with your view, but please be respectful. After all, we are Jedi. Alright, let's get stuck in. I believe the Force is the ubiquitous and metaphysical power underlying, fundamental nature of the universe. And as I stated earlier, I apply the principles, ideals, philosophies, and teachings practically within my life, while I believe that meditation and study of the Force are essential. I also believe that it is just as important that we should work directly within our communities applying Jediism's principles to assist and serve. So I am service-oriented, seeking to serve while preferring to remain anonymous. And what I mean by anonymous is that I am happy not to be the person getting the credit or the spokesperson. It is in this way, I hope my acts do not overshadow the accomplishments of my works. To do this, I build connections with those I serve and try to help build their capacity. Because I know that I might not always be around when something occurs. One of my most significant insights has been coming to the understanding that it is vital to blend Force teaching with non-Force skills. I remember an old country pastor telling a story one time. It seems that this devout man lived in a house on the banks of a river. One day it began to rain. A lot. And suddenly, he found his house surrounded by water, too deep for a standard car to traverse. So he started to pray. Then, after a little while, a couple of good old boys came by in a jacked-up truck. They saw that the man's car couldn't make it through, so they offered to take him out. But he thanked them kindly and told them God would save him and went back to praying. A few more hours passed, and now the man has had to climb on the roof of his house. A couple of firefighters in a boat come floating along and see the man still praying on his roof. They offer to take him out in their boat. But like before, he tells them he is okay. God will save me. Now it is starting to get dark, and well, the man has had to retreat to the peak of his roof. An army helicopter comes flying over and sees the man. They come to do clothes and threw him a rescue harness so they can hoist him to safety, but the man refuses and tells them that God will save him. The next thing the man knows, he is standing before God. Suddenly the man gets very upset and says to God, "Why didn't you save me? Was I not a good servant to you on earth?" God started to shake his head and said, "I sent a truck, a boat, and a helicopter. What else did you need?" The moral of this story is that the Force is in everything, and everything is the Force. So those skills are the Force as well, in my judgment. So I concentrate on these skills in combination with the Force in hopes of being a successful community servant. So it is in this way that I advance through my life as a Jedi. This is my belief as a Jedist and how I practice Jediism. Now that you know more about me, I hope that you can appreciate my approach a little better. So that is enough about me. Now let's get to the topic at hand. Building a real Jedi, What do I mean by that? First of all, Jedi are built, molded or formed. No one comes to Jediism already a Jedi. Though some may think so. But, everyone comes able to become a Jedi. And as responsible Jedist, each of us has a responsibility to help them get started on their journey and ensure that they have good foundations to weather the storms they will encounter. The next critical point is when we build a Jedi, we must start from the basics of what we all have. No one can assume that the new initiate has even seen a Star Wars movie. And from my viewpoint as a realist, I almost hope they haven't ever seen Star Wars or have one scrap of knowledge about the franchise. It certainly would make unteaching a few misconceptions easier. The formation of a Jedi is a systematic process. First, remember that becoming a Jedi is a journey. That implies there is a beginning, a path, waypoints and a destination. Imagine the form of a large oak tree versus that of a tumbleweed. The oak has a long thick straight trunk, the remnants of its development when it was young, ensuring it is able to stand up to all but the worst of storms. In contrast, the tumbleweed has no natural stem. Further, the oak has mighty branches to shoulder the burden of further development, where the tumbleweed has these spindly tangle stems. The oak will live for thousands of years and stand for another 1,000 after it has died. While the tumbleweed lasts a year, then detaches and blows away and winds up in a heap with all the other tumbleweeds. We, as Jedi, need to be able to develop and provide a path for new Jedi so that they can develop more like the oak and not the tumbleweed. Lastly, we must not just teach but unteach. But the time most initiates come to us, they have so many misconceptions about what we are, how the world works, what is acceptable to general society, and what is acceptable in the Jedi community. So we must unteach those misconceptions just as we teach new initiates the ways of the Force. But it even goes beyond that. Because we must constantly retrain and reteach. Even a Jedist who has been around since the beginning needs to remind themselves of what it is to be a Jedi. And all of this teaching training must be done with one fundamental purpose in mind, to expand a Jedi's consciousness. In this way, each time we look at who we are as Jedi, we gain new insight into the Force. With all that in mind, let's start building a Jedi. First, what is it that we all have to work with? What are the fundamental elements that we all have? Well, from my perspective, we are all made of three things. Our body, our mind, and the Force or Force energy. I feel that these are the fundamental element of every person. And it takes the formation of all of these elements if we wish to build a Jedi. So it is in the center where the mind, the body, and the Force are all in balance where a Jedi strives to live. Thus, Lesson 1. The understanding that a real Jedi is the balance of the three fundamental elements of sentient life. In teaching this, we give a Jedi the blueprint of how to develop. Giving him this knowledge first will help them further down the road as we lay the foundation stones of Jediism. Now that we have the blueprint for our Jedi, let's talk about the foundation stones to start realizing our blueprint. What are foundation stones? Well, foundation stones are the essential principles, ideas, facts, etc., on which something depends. In our case, this is Jediism. And to give a non-Jedi example, most people would agree that freedom of speech is a foundation stone of democracy. I hope this gives you a better understanding of what a foundation stone is. So, how many of your minds went to think about the Jedi Code? I know for most of you, it likely did, or as soon as I said it, you mentally agreed. Now, I am likely to upset some and break a few eggs, so to say. No. The Jedi Code, no matter which one you ascribe, are not a foundation stone of Jediism. Let me explain. The Code is the capstone of a Jedi's formation journey. Starting out trying to learn Jediism from the Code is like going to a city where they speak a different language and trying to navigate around without the aid of any translation guide. You're going to get lost, or worse, you will go down a blind alleyway and get yourself into trouble. However, if you decide to learn some basics of the language before you go, you're likely to be able to get around in a city that speaks a different language much more easily. Now, I didn't say that you wouldn't get a little lost or maybe piss off a cabbie because this is the nature of learning. So as I see it, there is a lot to learn before a new Jedi starts to try to digest the Code. So, if the Code is not a foundation stone but the capstone, what are the foundation stones of Jediism? Well, let's explore this a little bit. We are looking for essential principles, ideas, and facts about Jediism. I think that we can agree that the Force is an essential idea of Jediism. Especially since this is what makes us different in every way from what a new initiate has encountered ever before. After all, the Force is what makes us luminous beings, is it not? So after you have laid down the blueprint of what a Jedi journey looks like, this is probably an excellent place to start. But, don't drown a person learning about the Force either, because none of us is able to grasp everything about the Force, especially all at one time. So once we have provided some basic Force training and have imparted those basics to our new Jedi, next, we had better move on to meditation. Most of us can agree that meditation is probably another foundation stone of Jediism. But, in my journey, I have identified over 20 distinctly different kinds of meditation and hundreds of variations of those kinds. So for newbies or even well-versed Jedi, learning some of the basics from a few styles suited to Jediism is a good thing. This way, they can start encountering the Force personally and deepen their connection with it. Myself, I practice 3 different kinds depending on what I am trying to accomplish. Zen meditation, which I use to experience the Force, mindfulness meditation, which I use for centering myself, and contemplative meditation, which I use to enhance Jedi education, think on some big decisions, and a way to digest big ideas. I am by no means saying these are the only kinds, but using my own experience and training, these work best for me. So an introductory study of meditation and some techniques is essential in the growth of a Jedi. Now we should probably teach them the conduct of a Jedi. When I say this, I don't mean manners or bowing to another Jedi. I am talking about demeanor. Because it is by our conduct that most people will notice that we are somehow different. And hopefully in a good way. So far, we have taught our new Jedi about the Force, how to experience the Force through meditation, and how a Jedi is expected to act. So it is probably time to do some unteaching. And this is where we can likely all agree that attachment is the biggest thing we must unteach. Attachment to one thing or another is the biggest enemy of a Jedi, whether material, physical, mental, or emotional. And true attachments are damn hard to let go of. Now, don't go too far here. Most of us truly don't have the skills to address attachment. Things like addiction and depression take specialized care to address, but think of this more as training on how to identify it in ourselves and how to potentially address any that we may find. Attachments are deeply personal things, and a Jedi must recognize and desire to rid themselves of an attachment before they can even start to address it. So just learning what attachments are and how they can limit you from becoming the Jedi you want to be is where we need to focus. Following on from attachment is well-being. They do go hand in hand. A Jedi should be a picture of well-being, because it allows us to perform our duties as Jedi and be more harmonious with the Force. Looking after our well-being need to be paramount, and in doing so we will find that we will grow as Jedi. Another unteaching moment is arrogance. More damage, in my opinion, has been done to Jediism by arrogance and ego than any other. So, unteaching this is key to Jedi development. We are all made the same, and none of us knows everything. So we all should strive to do our best. And if we see someone struggling or even striving faster than us, we should assist or ask for help. Not get mad, denigrate, or leave someone in the proverbial dust. That is not the calling of a Jedi. So this is one of the foundation stones. But of course, we can't unteach arrogance without teaching modesty, especially respecting the rights of others to disagree and understanding that they nor we are perfect. Patience. Patience is probably one of the more challenging aspects for everyone to grasp. However, between the now culture and the drama culture prevalent in today's society, patience is not something that anyone does well, and one of the great virtues that have fallen aside. So the training, I think, on how not to precipitate events and how to act with a conscientious state of calmness is a crucial teaching. Integrity should go without having to be said, but integrity is more than just honesty. It is about having a set of strong moral principles that you refuse to change. It is this aspect that a new Jedi needs to have knowledge of. For it is a guidepost for them when they have their Jedi principles challenged. Service, in my opinion, is one of the foundation stones that gets overlooked too often. And it is just so large that it often becomes the elephant in the room. Learning service in every aspect of our life is essential. This includes calling a waitress by their name when ordering food to service to helping a charity balance its books for reporting. These are all services that influence the world. From my point of view, service is the point of being a Jedi. Mindfulness is another well-spoken of foundation stone. So is love. Which leads us to empathy. Mindfulness and love are prerequisites to being able to understand the concept of empathy and developing the ability to do it. Empathy is something that has too often been lost today, and I believe as Jedi we should ensure that are always empathetic to everyone. Defense. Defense is often probably the most misunderstood and wrongly quoted of the foundations of Jediism. It is not a call to arms, nor is it a reason to practice martial art as part of your Jedi path. Defense is about speaking up when you see something or someone doing morally or ethically wrong according to Jediism and working to our best ability to change or stop the wrong. The last thing anyone needs to do is run in with the quintessential lightsaber blazing, and while that style of defense has its place, it is a rare flower. Eternal life is something that nearly every belief system has across the planet. But, most, in my opinion, have made it overly complicated, and Jediism views on this are most down to earth. We start as Force energy. We end as Force energy. While I have simplified it too much here, at the same time is that simple. It can explain so much of what the other world calls fantastic. So grounding in this teaching is essential for a new Jedi. So is commitment. Because as Jedi we must be committed to Jediism principles and self-improvement. So much of a Jedi's development is personal, something that they must contemplate for themselves. So teaching about a Jedi's commitment is oh so important. I have covered off on what I consider the foundation stones of Jediisms, but just like building anything. But, of course, once we get done building the foundation, more structural pieces must be erected for a Jedi to be formed. I hope you have been watching our blueprint diagram as I have been progressing. See how it is filling in. Look at how these foundation stones have grouped themselves where the mind, force, and body intertwine. Also, notice how it is skewed to the mind and the force. I believe this is an intentional thing. Yes, the body is essential. But already, too much focus is put on the body. And the body is the easiest of the three to train. So, Jediism focuses on developing the mind and the force, with the body being there for support. Once we have covered the foundational principle and fundamental aspects of Jediism, this is when the new Jedi can dive into the code. This is when they should have enough knowledge not to get lost or wander down dangerous paths and can more naturally practice the code. Because it is now that they can have emotions without letting it unsettle them. Understand that they have large gaps in their knowledge, but what knowledge they have can help move mountains. They can have the drive that passion brings while not allowing it to envelop them beyond all reason. Even though the world is chaotic, they can remain in balance and harmony with the Force. And while death comes for all of us, we are never gone, we return from that which were made, and that some of our Force energy is imparted in everyone we have touched along the way. This is the deep dive. So now that we have gotten our Jedi ready to dive into the code and hopefully given them a good foundation to grow from. Is this all we need to do to build a Jedi? I want you to keep visualizing building a house. Once a house is built, will it stay in that new condition forever? Of course, the answer is no. The paint will begin to fade, the floors will begin to creak, and at some point, the kitchen cabinets will need replacing. The same can be said of our new built Jedi. So let's explore maintenance and upgrades to our new built Jedi a little. Here is our new build Jedi. What does everyone think? Should we name him? Maybe not. But let's take a look at our new build Jedi. Pretty basic model. He has a tunic and a lightsaber. Nothing too flash. Even now, still pretty new, his clothing looks a little dusty and discolored. This is the way it is with everyone who comes to Jediism, in my opinion. It doesn't take all that long for them to forget some of the foundational teachings, especially as they start exploring their own personal path. Maybe this one decided to take up spelunking or fell into a mud puddle. It doesn't really matter. The truth is we begin to forget things we shouldn't just because we aren't using or exploring all the teaching anymore. But, worse than just forgetting is the fact that it could lead to unlearning foundational teaching, and this could lead our new Jedi down paths away from a strong connection with the Force. Because we want every Jedi to, well, become this guy. But, how many of you this guy hasn't gone over the foundations of being a Jedi more than a few times? Oh, by the way, I threw this pic in for all you Star Wars fans out there. And well, Yoda is cool no matter if you are a fan or not. So, just how bad is the average person's memory retention? It has been studied pretty well by science. And it is a bit shocking. A Johns Hopkins University study says that within 1 hour after learning something new, you have likely already forgotten 50% of what you learned. Within 24 hours, another 20% is gone. And by the end of the week, you can only really recall 10% of what you were taught. That is why the concept of one and done is pretty useless when you decide to be a Jedi. Oh, by the way, I think we just learned why teachers in school gave tests at the end of the week. I guess they hoped we'd remember 10% of what they taught us. So, if a Jedi only retains 10% of something he has learned after 1 week, We need to see if we can improve their memory. So is there a way to plug this learning leak? There is. And it is beneficial to the Jedi's growth, as well. Let me explain. How many of you have heard of the learning pyramid? The learning pyramid is a learning model widely used worldwide to understand how we best retain information. It breakdowns teaching methods by how much is retained after being taught in a certain way. So let's unveil this pyramid. Lectures. Lectures are one of the most ineffective ways to learn and retain information. From a lecture alone, we only can retain 5% of what we are taught. This is because a lecture is a passive form of learning where you sit back and listen to the information being spoon-fed to you by your teacher. Therefore, attempting to acquire information and gain understanding only through lectures is not the most effective way of learning. Reading. While more effective than lectures, you still only retain about 10% of what you learn. Audiovisual. The learning pyramid suggests that audiovisual learning methods only lead to a 20% retention of information learned alone. The audiovisual learning method may incorporate various audiovisual learning/teaching tools, including videos, sound, pictures, and graphs. However, as media and computer technology continue to evolve, new forms of audiovisual instruction lead to more effective learning and retention of material. The effectiveness of audiovisual learning and study methods are enhanced when combined with other, more active forms of study. So you learn more watching television than listening to the teacher in a classroom. Demonstration. Demonstration usually involves the teacher or professor providing students with a learning task that they can observe. This learning method allows us to retain about 30% of what is being taught. Within the structure of the learning pyramid, demonstration is the first of the 7 study methods that involve active learning. Demonstration offers students less ambiguity than passive study methods and leads to fewer misconceptions and greater understanding. The demonstration can be an effective study method, especially when ambiguous or confusing information. Discussion. Discussion, or group discussion, is a form of cooperative learning. It is also an active study method that can lead to more excellent retention of information, actually about 50%. Discussion groups are intended to stimulate student thinking and increase participation and engagement. Practice by doing. Practice by doing, a form of discover learning, is one of the most effective learnings and study methods, enabling us to retain about 75% of what we are taught. This study method encourages students to take what they learn and put it into practice, promoting more profound understanding and moving information from short-term to long-term memory. Practice makes the material more personal, and thus more meaningful to students. Practice by doing also leads to a more in-depth understanding of the material, more excellent retention and better recall. Teaching others. The key to mastery is teaching it to others. If you can accurately and correctly teach a subject to others, you'll have an excellent mastery of the concepts, and superior retention and recall. According to the learning pyramid model, students are able to retain about 90% of what they're able to teach to others. The most common form of teaching others is peer tutoring. However, the best place to teach others is in a study group. Therefore, one of the main activities that should occur in an influential study group is a peer-to-peer teaching, where each group member takes the opportunity to teach the other group members the course material being studied. So focusing on ways that better retain knowledge will help Jedi retain more and forget less. So to make sure a Jedi retains the knowledge he needs to begin his pathway to mastery, they should focus on those facets of the learning pyramid that will help them retain the most information. These feature discussions with other Jedi, consciously practicing the different aspects of what it means to be a Jedi and beginning to teach others about the ways of Jediism. Personally, this has been my approach for quite some time, and now that I feel that I have a good understanding of the basics of Jediism, I am working on delving deeper into those I emphasized earlier. But where to start and ensure you don't get stuck on any aspect while forgetting others? For this, I have taken a bit of a page out from the Catholics and a few other Christian groups that use this similar system. How many of you have heard of the liturgical cycle? This is the blueprint of teachings used by many Christian groups. It takes them through the key stories and expressions of their religion on an annual basis based on the significant events on their calendar, such as Easter and Christmas. So it is a pretty good way of making sure that followers are reminded of their fundamental teachings annually. What I have done for my development is create a similar guide, whereby I work through different elements and thoughts on an annual calendar. So, how about I give you a peek at my attempts to retain knowledge and work on my mastery of Jediism? Here is a sample of my annual formation guide. Based loosely on the concept of the liturgical year, my intent is to focus on practicing and contemplating particular aspects of the foundation stones of Jediism. I know that some of you likely said to yourself, I don't see many of the foundation stone. That is because this is a little more advanced. But, every item in this can be drawn back to one or more of the foundation stones. Because there are many aspects to each of the foundation stones, learning all of their names is essential for mastery of Jediism in my view. Now let's look at how I have structured my formation guide. I have divided each month into 2 exercises. Practice and contemplate. I try to do both to promote continuous improvement in myself. The practice element tend to be positive items that a Jedi should strive to master, while those under contemplation are negative aspects that we must control so they do not control us. With those elements under practice, I place emphasis for that month to either perform or focus on that element. With those elements under contemplation, I meditate and journal on them and undertake a self-check on how these less desirable elements might be entering my life and how I might improve or rid myself of them. Through practicing and doing Jediism, I hope to continue to retain knowledge, and through meditation and journaling, I hope not only to rid myself of some undesirable qualities but learn more about how not to let them control me. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground in this talk. So before we go on to the next speaker or close out the evening, I'll do a quick review and then get into some more profound takeaways. First of all, we need to provide a blueprint for Jedi to use those things we all have: a body, our mind, and the Force. With this blueprint, a Jedi can visualize how to balance or build themselves into a Jedi. While the code is a prominent part of Jediism, without a good grounding in fundamental teaching before getting into the code, we are likely to get lost, frustrated, or go down dangerous paths. While teaching is essential, we must remember that everyone comes with bad habits and misconceptions, and it is equally important to focus on unteaching some things. It is essential to focus a Jedi's development on developing the mind and their connection with the Force. We start bringing about the essential balance between body, mind, and Force that we need to be Jedi. Further, I want you to remember that you cannot hit a topic once or even 10 times in your training and expect to retain what you have learned forever. While we strive to be something more, physically, we are just human, and as humans, we forget so much of what we have learned in such a short time. But, we can learn in a certain way that gives us an edge, a Jedi mind trick of sorts. By actively discussing, practicing what we learn and teaching the ways of Jediism. Finally, don't pigeonhole yourself into a narrow view on any of the elements of Jediism. Instead, learn all there is to know about the elements, because no matter if you call it a biscuit or a cookie, you're still eating a treat. So that is my view on how we build a Jedi realist. I thank you for allowing me to speak to you today, or at least my voiceover self. But, before I call it a day, 3 more in-depth takeaways I would like you to consider. As Jedist, we are responsible for providing new initiates with the instruction they need to set out on their path. Because so much of a Jedist training is personal development, we need to continually look at how we train ourselves, ensuring that we are challenging our development so that we can better pass along our insights to others, ever growing closer to the Force. And remember this above all: a Jedi's role in this world is to serve others, especially other Jedi. Thank you all. And may you ever find solace in the Force.